All right. Hello, everybody. This is our fourth Wednesday Ask Me Anything event. So, this is when I just answer any questions that anyone might have. So, go ahead, throw those in the chat if you got them. If you have any questions about uh, something your animals did, you can ask questions about basically any animal, really. If you have any animal behavior questions, go ahead, throw them in the chat, and I will be happy to answer them. While I wait for some questions to come in, I guess I'll just give some updates. We are looking at currently going back into regular business around what they call the Ad Astra, or the officially the Ad Astra Kansas plan, um, when phase three hits. So we're hoping, crossing fingers, that within the month we will be at that point and being able to go back into people's homes where we can help their animals. Until then, we're actually having quite a bit of success with the online training process. A lot of people are taking advantage of that, and we've actually branched out even more so to further locations, Georgia and Kentucky and Indiana and things of that nature. But I'd like to know what you guys have for questions. If anything you've seen that's unusual or any questions that you might have, go ahead, throw them in the chat. One thing I do expect to be becoming an issue, we'll discuss, is basically separation anxiety. I do believe that that is going to become the next big thing as far as my job is concerned and helping with families. And I'll think it's going to be a problem with a lot of people because while everybody's been stuck at home, that has really um, been beneficial for the pets' mental well-being and mental welfare because they love us and we love them. But when we suddenly go back to work on the regular, that's going to be possibly traumatic for a number of our little furry buddies out there. So it is something that okay, it is something that we I would like to focus on for the future and see about people doing some preemptive exercises. Possibly, if they have to kennel their pet up because maybe they do freak out when you leave, I would suggest just start kenneling them for an hour or a bit during the day, and maybe just leaving them. Maybe kennel them, go do some outdoor yard work for a little bit just to get them used to the process. If you know you're going to be going back to work here pretty soon, it's definitely something I would suggest. Make it as positive as you can, but really what we're looking for is what we like to call emotional resilience. So that is the getting the animals used to that emotional state of you not being there, and it is going to be upsetting for them. But if they become more resilient to it emotionally, then they can handle it without acting out. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat. We'll be happy to answer those. Even if it's a silly meme that you saw somewhere and you want to know if there's any basis in reality on it, or maybe you see some wildlife nearby that you would like some information on, or if the behavior has come up. Been getting a lot of puppies lately. I think a lot of people took advantage of the fact that they were home more often. So puppies were definitely up in the past month or so. Looks like we have a couple people here. Feel free to say hi in the chat so that we know that you're here and you're watching. As usual, I do have my personal companion right behind me, and that's Namera. She's an old pup, so she just kind of sleeps most of the time. But she's got her little orthopedic bed right there. And the other dog bed that the other dogs aren't using right now. They're probably just upstairs doing something. Who knows what. But feel free, once again, put any questions you might have right into the chat, and we will be happy to answer them. So it does look like we do have a couple people watching. Feel free to just let us know. Let me know how you're doing during all of this. Call it a welfare check on the pets and on ourselves. All right. Year ago, I got a first question here. Year ago, we got a new puppy, a mini Aussie, and our 3-year-old half beagle became, I don't know, jealous. Could be, possibly. Started messing in the house all the time, and our puppy was trained in a litter box with cedar chips. Okay. He traveled all over the states on a cattle truck before coming to us. Okay. He did really good when we trained him with a bell to go outside, but then after a few months started following the older dog. I tried to kennel train them both all over, and ugh, it's a pain. My basement carpet is probably ruined. We have better days, but still it's an ongoing problem. At a loss. Okay. Sounds like you've already started the bell process and you started the kenneling process. So there could be a number of different factors in here. One is also how old is the older dog, and is it going number one and number two, or just number one? So you're just having pee everywhere. So there's a couple things I need to figure out. It could be jealousy. When I work with an animal, I don't like to try to figure out exactly what the emotion is, because the emotions can be all over the place. So I focus more on the behaviors that we're seeing, and then see what we can do to change the environment, change the methodologies for the pup to alter that. Do dogs feel emotions? Yes, but that doesn't help us as much because we can't read their minds. We're very bad at reading other people's emotions oftentimes, so it makes it tough for dogs. So I would look at this as maybe this new dog is a catalyst to this behavior. So we definitely know there's something along those lines. And it also looks like the younger dog was learning from the older dog as a potential. A couple other things that I would look into is how long are they being left alone when they are having these accidents? You are kennel training them, it sounds like. I'm guessing you're probably having some issues with that. Find both pee and poop. Okay. So then the next question would be, how long are they being left alone? Because generally you don't want a dog. A dog needs to go to the restroom at least every 4 hours. You can stretch it every once in a while, but on the regular, you want to be able to let them out every 4 hours. If you can't let them out more often, if it has to be 6, you can get away with that with adult dogs here and there. But generally, you're going to need like lunch breaks to break up the day for them, because they just physically can't hold it. And then one of the problems is they get that, if you're not there, then they get that natural reinforcement of going to the bathroom when you're not there, um, by just doing it, because it feels they get relief, they feel better. So then they're going to do it more and then more and more, which is also why I would suggest kennel training, but it sounds like you're already doing that. Then the other factor is they probably are picking the same location, and that location is a place that you don't catch them, which is one of the problems with like punishing a dog for going to the restroom, because all it teaches them is to not do it in certain areas, because you can't always be there. They'll always find a spot like around a corner or down in the basement, something along those lines. If they're found a spot that they're going pretty regularly, I would honestly just block that whole thing off so they can't go there. So baby gates, things of that nature, and they're going to need to be monitored at all times. Sounds like you did start the bell process and they are going outside there. You would need to start reinforcing them, making sure they're reinforced outside, because by reinforcing them when they go outside, they'll want to do that more often. So that is the issue that you're kind of seeing. So it sounds like this is a fairly complex situation. So I'm just going to go back to the basics, really. Kennel them when you're not there. Our Roddy got a toy that Oh wait, okay. This is another question. I'm going to finish with Kim, and then I will get to Beverly. Okay, so really, you got to go back to the basics. Kennel them up when you're not around. If you can't monitor them, block off them being able to go and run places that you can't monitor. Um, Not long, tops maybe 6 hours, and I take the mini with me to work. Don't find a mess when the beagle is home alone. So I'm not even sure who it is anymore. Yeah. So first we need to figure out who it is. Um, Block off. So this old blocking off will definitely help. So um, you want to block off different areas so that you are monitoring 24/7. If you can't monitor the dogs, they can't go there. Usually I use baby gates. If I'm in one room, the dogs have to follow me to that room, and then they get let out. So that way you're not letting them reinforce themselves by relieving themselves, because they will self-train and do that over and over again. Kennel when you're not there to make sure that it's not happening. If they're having issues with the kennel, I would also make sure the reinforcement is super high. So I would start doing experiments like ham, turkey, different types of dog treats to see which one is really getting them excited uh, to do what we need them to do. Um, so really, I'd say just break it down to the basics until you get it back. And then I would also, sometimes people get excited and start relieving, giving them more freedoms. I would be hesitant to do that for a little while because I want to make sure that behavior is fully locked in before just letting them go and then them just doing the bad old habits again, because it turns out we only partially got rid of it. So go back to the basics. Don't let them go places like the basement. In fact, actually, I recently had this same issue with that dog right back there. We're kind of having that issue. It has more to do with he has a bad stomach, so we're probably going to be taking him to the vet to figure out what's going on. Probably give him some probiotics, but because he has diarrhea, he can't hold it, and he doesn't have time to warn us. So his go-to spot is also in the basement. So our fix for that, honestly, put a baby gate up so he can't go to the basement. He only gets to come to the basement when somebody else is down here and can monitor him. So that way we know that those mistakes aren't happening. But sometimes else, that was one reason I was also asking about age, because sometimes a physical issue can come up if it's very sudden, but it doesn't quite sound like that's this. All right, so Beverly, I hope that answers a little bit of your questions there, Kimberly. Okay, Beverly, our Roddy got a toy that has a rope as part of the toy. Now she thinks her leash is a toy and is now impossible to walk. Okay. Okay, you need a strong leash that is okay. So it's a braided leash, which is why she's also having issues with that. Um, okay, so there's a few different things you can do. Basically, one thing that I do, there's a practice where I start reinforcing them when they let go of the leash. However, there's this fine line because you don't want them to grab the leash to let go of the leash, because they learn, okay, this is how we're got to check up on that guy since he just left. We have to make sure that that they don't learn to just grab the leash to then let go of it and get the reinforcement. So I do reinforce them for that. You can also start playing with them, offering them the leash and the toy, and then whenever they grab the leash, just basically disengage from it, because what they want is you to play tug. And then when they do bite the tug toy, that's when you wrestle and you give them that reinforcement. So then they learn, oh, I don't get this when I bite this, but I do get it when I bite the tug toy. Also on walks, you could potentially take the tug toy if it's not too much of a hassle. Usually I like the ones that are slightly, if I'm doing something like that, I like the ones that are slightly longer so that when I don't need it, I can just drape it around my neck and not have to hold it the whole time. But when they start, just offer them the other toy, and then when they disengage, I tend to also mark, if like, so I click or go good when they do that, just to let them know that's the thing I wanted them to do, and then they get the reward for doing that. Um, but the hard part when you're walking is obviously you still have to hold on to the leash, so it feels like tugs to them. So you might have to practice outside of walking. Put both in front of them. Let him engage with either one. If he engages with the leash, disengage. Let go of it. Let him take it. Do whatever. However, if you're seeing that he's getting super excited about getting it from you, then you might not want to do that. But really, the main thing what you want to do is when he grabs if he does grab that wrong one, you just let go, disengage, and then get super excited about the other one. And then that's what he's going to eventually want to go with. The key is you need to make the rope toy the exciting thing, and then eventually he'll figure out, oh, these two things are different, and I'm only getting reinforced with the rope toy. Another thing, if you are on walks and you have treats, you can also, if you don't have the rope toy with you, you can ask them to teach them to let go. Put it on a cue, give command, and then when they let go of the thing, they get the reward. It's actually very easy to teach, especially with a slight luring at the beginning, i.e. you put the treat up next to them, because they have to open their mouth to take the treat. They can't hold and take the treat at the same time, so they have to choose, and then eventually you just ask, and then the treat shows up later. So I would put it on a cue or a command where you're saying give to have them let go of the thing that you don't want them to have. Also, I would start re-engaging them and showing them that there's not fun with the oh, it's a fetch toy. Okay. Well, honestly, I think if you're capable, I probably would turn the rope toy into a tug, because maybe is he tugging? The question is he actually tugging with the rope toy, or the leash, or is he just holding on to it? But otherwise, if you're just looking for strong leashes, I am perfectly fine with chain leashes. The problem is if he is biting it, he has the potential to get his teeth into the chains, and then you could end up with a broken tooth, or a leather one is just fine as long as you don't give them access to it. There's a lot of materials that work just fine. Honestly, the main thing that I'm focused on is the weight and durability. Puts it in Haley's mouth, spins and sits. Ah, okay. So she's kind of learned that. Honestly, I would probably just start playing a little bit of tug with her as well. Tug is perfectly fine to do. You just have to. The thing that people tend to not do is puts it in her mouth, spins and sits. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, who's Haley? Okay, puts it in her mouth and spins and sits. So that's a learned behavior, and it's obviously reinforced because then you throw the toy. I would honestly still do that exercise. You can do that exercise, but anytime she chooses the leash, I would offer, you can still do this with the throwing thing. Like, if she engages with the leash, basically what you want to do is she engages with the leash, you get boring. She engages with the other thing, you get exciting. We're going to continue playing this game of throw and all that. But if you grab the leash, I'm not going to play. She will figure it out. So I would actually honestly just offer both, but only reinforce when only get exciting and be reinforcing and throwing and playing when she picks the tug toy. Eventually, she's going to figure out, oh, that isn't a fun thing. I'm just going to let go of the leash. Also, I would put the let go on cue just in case it is more of a tug and enjoyment kind of thing that she's getting out of it. I feel like my chair is shrinking. There it is. It did shrink. Okay. I think that would be a good strategy to start with you. Just basically make sure that the tug toy is reinforcing, even if or the rope toy is reinforcing, but boring is the leash, and then eventually it will even out. All right. Does anybody have any other questions? Those are some very good questions today. Some complicated situations, actually. No problem. The I'm actually been looking into. There's a situation where you're trying to get a drive like that under control, and one of the ways to do it is just put it on cue. So like then you can then because then if the dog does have one of those psycho drives where they're like, I just want to play with the thing, and you cue it up, and then you have two things, and then you throw one, and then they play with that, but then you cue up the second one, and then you can keep rotating, but or have them switch between toys, and they get super excited about it because it's now something new and great. But you as the human have control of the situation a little bit more, rather than just the dog doing what they want and trying to get you to engage with it. All right. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. It can be about pets. It can be about wildlife. It can be. I've been working with animals for way too many years. 25. Well, 25 plus years at this point in time. But probably a little longer if you count 4-H dog training back in the day. But yeah, feel free to put them into the chat, and we will be happy to answer them, even if it's a silly meme thing that you saw, or maybe you saw an article and you're like, "What is this all about?" Or if you have to go back to work and you're curious what you should do with your pet, because that I do feel is going to be a big issue coming up as people go back to work, because dogs have probably been super pampered. And honestly, I think it's actually going to be on both ends. I think both the dogs are going to miss the owners even more, and the owners are going to miss the dogs even more. And it's going to be a double whammy of separation anxiety or separation depression, however you want to look at it, or depending on how each one reacts to the situation. But I definitely suggest people that are know they're going back and know a date that when they're going back. I do suggest that they start acclimating their dogs back to the idea that they won't be there. So start getting the dogs used to the process of being left alone or being put in a kennel. Maybe put them in a kennel and then go barbecue out and back, which normally, yes, we want the dog out there, but we are doing this for the dog's well-being in the future, because we want to get them used to being alone again, and they need that emotional resilience. I say that a lot. Emotional resilience. It works with kids, and it works with adults, and it works with animals. They need that emotional resilience to handle when things go bad, when they don't get what they want. And what they're going to want is to be around you 24/7, because a lot of people have been working from home or working half shifts at work, half shifts at home, etc. And these animals are not going to understand why you're heading back to work. So, and not getting that midday nap that they might have starting to get used to. So it's good to start getting them acclimated to that. You can save yourself a lot of headache with a little bit of prep work ahead of time. Just getting them even for an hour more used to it. Let's see. Oh, Cammy. Hey, Cammy. I have a 1-year-old English bulldog that attacks my female Australian Shepherd just out of the clear blue, sometimes while she is sleeping. Okay. So the bulldog is attacking the Australian Shepherd while she's sleeping. Just want to make sure that I understand that one 100%. Otherwise, the bulldog's attacking the shepherd even while the shepherd is sleeping. Okay. Well, the bulldog is obviously getting something out of it, and I do get this out of a lot, and I don't feel bad because everybody says it, but everybody always says out of the clear blue or out of nowhere is a common statement. Every behavior is there's an what we call an antecedent before it, something that has led up to that behavior happening, whether it's from the dog or its environment. Something is there. Uh, the question is, um, the question is, of course, is um, what is it that the dog is reacting to? Which can be the tricky part, which is why a lot of people say it's out of nowhere, because either a they're not looking in the right spots, they don't have the expertise to find it, or they just really don't see it. And one other factor that could be is that it's a very short antecedent, like, well, saw the squirrel, going for it. That doesn't take long. As soon as that squirrel happens, boom, they're gone. But there's always something there. The fact that it's a 1 year old, to me, hi, what's happening, Graywin? The fact that it's a 1 year old to me is suggestive that this could just be an energy level thing and want to play. And he could just be used to seeing the other dog and going, let's play. And obviously, sometimes the play gets a little rough, especially with bulldogs. They sound terrible when they start play because it's like, but that's just because of the way that they are. So there's there's a number of things you have to deal with that. One is start looking for antecedents, and they might be from him and not from the environment. So they you might be looking for his ears or his facial features shifting. Sometimes when they get excited, their wrinkles either increase or straighten out a little bit, like, and they get their eyes. One big one is whale eyeing, when the eyes get super wide on the dogs, and you see the whites of their eyes, like, oh, I'm super excited about something now. That will be an antecedent from him that he's exhibiting before he goes and does it. So try to see if you can start seeing those little subtle things. The problem with a bulldog is they do have wrinkles and they have very short hair. So like the cackles or the hairs going up on the back or the butt might be harder to tell. Now, the next thing I would do is try to put it on a cue to ask him to go somewhere else or do something else when you do finally start figuring it out. Or even if he starts going towards the shepherd, maybe start asking him. That's actually why I start with a behavior. Greywind left. Greywind, you around? Here you go, Namara. You hear the crinkles. He's not here. He went back upstairs somewhere. So, oftentimes what I start with is I train almost all of my clients the first thing. Instead of sit, I train them target. I train them to touch the hand. So that way you now have a way to ask for them to leave the other thing alone. And I would focus on that, asking him to go away from the shepherd. I would also start noting whenever you see the bulldog go towards the shepherd and then go away, and start marking and rewarding him. So maybe having some good treats, very small, that he gets every time he ignores the shepherd for whatever reason. Even if he's like goes towards it for a second and then goes away, I would totally reward that, because then you're going to make that behavior happen more and more often instead of the behavior of him going towards and attacking the other dog, because obviously he's having some type of excitement from it. It's play. It's super exhilarating. So what you need to do is you need to put a reinforcer on the other side of the other behavior, because otherwise he's only going to self-reinforce and keep doing that, because he's going to enjoy jumping up on the other dog 100% of the time. So the main thing is you have to find something to compete with the shepherd, and then after a while, maybe do some target practice training, and then after some target training, I would then add target training while the shepherd's walking the other way, or something that would normally trigger him in a controlled way, so that way you can start trying to get him to desensitize as well to the stimulation of that other dog. But that would basically be the gist of that. So I hope did that answer your question there, Cammie? Let me know. And if anybody has any other questions, throw them into the chat. I will be happy to answer them. So I was also talking earlier. We are starting to pick up back business back up as people are learning that we can do online training. A lot of people are starting to figure try that. Okay, thank you. I will try that. I know. Screamed at that makes it worse. Yeah, and also the screaming. Okay, actually screaming at them and yelling at them a lot of that's a good thing to bring up actually before I get into that other tangent I was about to go in. Let's finish this up. So yelling at the dogs and going, no, 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 stop, 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 actually amplifies them. I have two dogs that Oscar was down here a little earlier. The black dog, he gets picked on by our two of our other dogs, and one thing you'll see them doing is when they both start going after him, they'll start barking, and you'll see that their own barking actually kind of snowballs the issue, and it grows and grows and grows and makes it worse and worse and worse. So you yelling and saying no just sounds actually like you're joining in the play and the fight. So you're actually reinforcing that behavior of jumping on the other dog because it seems more exciting when the pack joins in on the little play behavior or the fight or whatever's going on. So yes, yelling doesn't actually make it worse because of that situation. So I'm kind of glad that you mentioned that because that is a very common issue because our instinct is go no 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 no. That sounds like barking to them, and it just sounds like all right, you're in my cheering crowd. Let's go, let's do this instead, which is not what you want. So yeah. Oh, back to what I was saying just a second ago. Our online training is increasing more and more. Just a few weeks ago, it was really weird how far I'm getting spread out now nationally. Although it's still kind of picking up because people learn like, oh, this is a viable option to have an online training instead. Uh, oh yeah, go ahead and schedule with me. The online training is because basically what I do anyway is I still have to train you. The only step that's taken out is I'm working directly with the animal. So now it's just listening to you, coming up with a plan based on what you're witnessing and telling me, and then then basically uh I'll get to that here in a second. Then I will then I work with the dog, then I work with you to make sure that you know what to do with the dog. But really just cut out that step and just I'm working with you online. All you got to do is put a phone in an angle so that I can see you working with the dog, and then you'll hear my coaching you over your shoulder or wherever the phone is. You'll hear my voice and see a little image of me going, nope, faster, slower. Okay, do that. How about let's change this because that's not working out, and I'll adjust it while you're working. Um, just a few weeks ago, actually, it was really funny because it turned out I haven't been paying attention exactly where my clients are all coming from now, and most of them, of course, are still more from the region. But I had a Kentucky client that actually was recommended to me by a shelter in Indiana, and then I ended up with a job, and I was like, okay, so it's just kind of all over the place right now. Let's go to the question. I see a question in there. Know any ways to get swallows to quit building nests near the outdoor kennel dog has high prey drive and they're driving us nuts. Okay, okay. All right. So, how to make sure that the swallows don't build nests? There are a number of things that you can do, but I will tell you that it is very difficult because they are very affluent nest builders. And this is a battle that I've had especially when I was in the zoo field, particularly in Georgia, was the worst because we had very large barns with their kangaroos in Georgia, and in those barns, well, these are like 20, 30-foot barns in there, and we could not reach all the spots. Here's what we did, and also even hit the zoo here. Apparently they don't like this grape resin type thing, so that's one thing you can do. You can spray the whole place down with that. Now, keep in mind, grape's not toxic. Yes, no, grape is toxic to dogs. Sorry. There's so many things that animals can be that Yes, they are determined little jerks. There's so many things that animals can be. Uh, some animals are toxic to certain things and not others. So if you use the grape, I think it's from grape seed, but there's a thing that actually works somewhat well where you spray it and the swallows don't want to be near it. Problem is, it is toxic to dogs, so you have to make sure that you spray it. Well, I don't know if the resin is, but I do know grapes are. Let me retract that because maybe they don't have the whatever is toxic to dogs in there. But um, the main thing is use this. But just because I do know grapes are toxic to dogs, you'd want to spray it uh, wherever the dog can't get to. So basically, you just spray it wherever their nests are, and that can deter them. The other thing you can do, of course, is mimic a predator. So you can get one of those fake owls, but I would also add some owl calls. And the other problem with that, though, is people get complacent with those fake predators, and birds will figure out real quick that that thing hasn't moved in a week. It's not a real one, and then they'll start nesting right on top of it. So if you do get one, I would honestly suggest if you don't move it daily, at least move it every other day to make sure that they don't pick up that it is a that it is not real. The other thing you can do is there are little things you can get that will make it uncomfortable for them to perch, or just basically put wood plankings in so that they can't get to perching locations. So the problem is you're eventually going to end up putting those like planks and guards and things of that nature pretty much everywhere, but you're going to start with where they're already at and then kind of move on from there. The third thing, so we talked about using some type of chemical deterrent, which the one that I know of that works the best is made out of grapes. And then there's the predator deterrent or fake predator, the scarecrow, if you will. I would suggest using a sound system as well. So one that has the owl call. Uh, third is the third method. Oh, actually, let's go back to that predator thing. Another option that you have, depending on how big the dogs are and things in around your area, you could actually build an owl nest or some type of make it. It's kind of like a bird box situation, only instead you're actually making it for the predatory bird. So look up making hawk nest boxes and owl nest boxes. The particularly with swallows, you want hawks, or particularly look research for your where you are at, which type of hawks and which ones they would go after the swallows. And then I would honestly set it up for them, because what's going to happen is if there's a nest of theirs nearby, of their predators nearby, then those swallows are not going to want to be nest right next to it. So they might not go far. They might still be at your neighbor's house, but at least they're not right next to you. So that's an option. Get a predatory nest box, which basically bigger. um, the Then the last one would be obviously getting rid of their food, getting rid of their food source of the swallows. However, that is dang near impossible because they eat flies and they all that other stuff. So they're mainly insectivorous, if I recall. So the main issue with that is how are you going to get rid of all those flies if you're out in the country? Which is always why you have that kind of you have a catch-22 situation. So really, I would probably target and just make sure that their nests are further away from your dog's area. Maybe even give them a spot to be at that's more preferable, and then just so maybe if you have another side of your property, maybe put the swallow like a swallow box over there, and then make your over by where they're bugging your dog, make that less preferable with astringents and possible physical barriers to make it tough. But those are basically the ways the only ways that I know of to get rid of swallows. Get rid of is a I shouldn't say that, but control them to make it less. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? Any other animal questions? Throw them into the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. With regards to these types of situations, whether it's behavior, training, or if you have questions on, yeah, I don't know. Just throw them into the chat. Anything in there. I think on a daily basis, somebody sends me something. Either it's I ran into this situation. What is this? Or, oh, I saw a meme on Reddit, and is this true? Is this valid? I'd be happy to answer it to the best of my knowledge. The high prey drive kennel dog. Yeah, that's a tough one. Really, one of the things I'm trying to think on how to control the other aspect you could try to do with that kennel dog is trying to control his prey drive. But if he's out there 24/7, that's almost impossible to do. Which is why I do suggest a lot of times is to have those dogs come inside situation if it's possible. I can. Yeah, Cammy. What do I think of Cesar Millan? I think that he is archaic. I think that his methods with aversives have been disproven multiple times over. I am not a fan. This flat out. I will admit that I am not a fan of Cesar Millan. He doesn't have as good of a success rate as they make it out in the show. If you actually watch the text at the end, like half the dogs actually just go to his ranch. So it's not so much that he has a high success rate as he has a backup plan because he's rich enough to have a massive ranch where he can have 300 dogs and pay employees to take care of them out there. There's a few other issues with it. I mean, he's not even allowed to train in certain countries. He couldn't pass the trainer's exam to go to Germany, for example. They made some BS excuse that it was because he didn't that language barrier, but they gave him an English test, and really it was because he is stuck on that. Yeah, his stuff. I'm not going to say crazy because it is it's what we call I avoid aversives. And in all honesty, I will admit that I used to train in his style because that's how I was trained. It's just the way people think that training needs to be. And even for myself, I'll talk about my journey with regards to training. So I started off as an aversive trainer because I started off in 4-H. I was like 11 or 12 years old. I can't remember. It was like 7th grade maybe. And yeah, it was definitely 7th grade because it was my 7th grade teacher was my was the one who started me on dog training. Anyway, so she started with aversive methodologies, choke chains, all of that. In fact, to get a dog to grab a weight, the methodology that we were all taught was pinch the dog's ear until it yelps, which causes their mouth to open, and then you put it in there, and then you reward. That's just how it was done. It's how it's been done for a long time, and there's a lot of debate still in the trainer world. It is moving more and more towards the positive reinforcement and lack of I want to say lack of aversives, because an aversive is something that that's not pleasurable for anybody involved. And when I started off, I started that way. I trained that way for a long time, and then I was what we call a balance trainer, which I don't really like that term because that uses aversives and positive reinforcement. But the problem with balance training is that there's no real definition to that term. So I don't like the term balance trainer, because where are you on the spectrum? Are you 80-20, 50-50? Where does that fall? And also, and then I went into the zoo field. Oh, I'm about to sneeze here. Went into the zoo field, which is excuse me, which is a strictly positive reinforcement based system for the most part. There are some sections in there that are not, depending on which facility you're at and which organization you're with. But uh, in all the ones that I was with, we basically had to focus on positive reinforcement, and it was weird. You put these barriers in between, and you have what you do at work, and you have what you do at home. And for me, it was what I do with zoo animals, what I do with dogs, and then eventually there was this cognitive dissonance. I think is that the term where you have basically two ideas that don't mesh. Is it cognitive dissonance? I can't remember what the term is, but basically you have two ideas, they don't mesh. You start having issues in your mind about it, and then eventually one wins out. Eventually, for me, the one that won out was the positive reinforcement. I went through a number of uh, workshops with some very high-end trainers and behaviorists, and I basically started pushing myself um, towards that positive reinforcement. And in fact, one of the situations that led me to this conclusion also was a failed attempt at that I had with a personal dog that was increasing aggression, because I was taught, okay, well, we're just going to punish her for the aggression, because I was running out of options. So I was doing a lot of techniques that they used to teach and Cesar Millan and his fans would teach. But then that story didn't end well. The dog didn't make it. We had to make a decision for everyone's safety, and that's also what also helped trigger in my brain, this isn't working, so I'm going to start researching other methods. And then that's when I found that the more positive reinforcement approach works a lot better, particularly for aggression issues, because fighting does not make things fight less. I'll tell you that much. And if you're butting heads with something, uh, you're, you're not going to just make it okay by fighting more. So you need to find a way to calm the situation, to de-escalate the situation. So Cesar Millan's methods tend to increase the aggression rate in a lot of animals, and I've even used some of those techniques that he uses, and I can tell you from my experience, they increase the aggression rates. So I much more prefer doing a positive methodology approach, but I am a science based, so I do acknowledge that there are ways to learn that are aversives. Because I mean, I used to always say, "Oh, the shush." Okay, I'll get into the shush method and why I hate the shush method. But okay, so one thing I would always say was like, "Oh, the kid reaching for the hot stove is going to get the you slap their hand to make sure that they don't reach for the stove, because that's going to be a much worse situation if they burn themselves versus a slap on the wrist." And that might be okay every once in a while, but uh, if you are primarily using those types of aversive techniques, you're going to cause more mental issues with a child or with an adult or with an animal. So when you add, what instead you do is you come up with other methods to communicate with them. I find that the behaviors tend to be stronger. It does take longer, it takes a little bit more time, but the behaviors become stronger and locked in more, and you have a lot less backlash. In fact, actually, one trainer loved a quote that I put on it. I'm still apprenticing under online, because I always pick every year I try to learn something new from a new trainer. So I usually pick somebody out there in the world, and I apprentice under them for a year, just to keep learning, because nothing stays stagnant. But one time in the chat, I even said using aversives is like using a crutch with side effects. So yes, you can get an animal to stop by using an aversive very quickly, which is what makes people feel happy and good, because like, aha, I got him to stop. But it has side effects, such as a potential for increased aggression and things like that. The shush method. Okay, so let's go back to that shush method that Cesar Millan does. As I said, I'm much more science based. So what I'm basically doing is what's called operant conditioning, and basically almost everything that they're doing is a form of this operant conditioning, which, but without the correct timing and associations, those things don't work. So I will say things like markers or clickers, but this doesn't work. I could click all day long on a dog who's never heard a clicker, and either I'm scaring the dog because it has no positive association, it's a sudden noise and they're paranoid, or B, it's just ignoring the sound because it has no reason. The click's not bad, it's not good. What was it mean? Same with the shush. Until you create a an association with that stimulus, it's not going to mean anything. The shush method only works if the animal's afraid of you. So you have to build that fear response into the animal. Something bad's about to happen if I keep up doing what I'm doing because he's shushed. So that's how that method works. They don't show you that in the show, but that dog has to be afraid of you. It's like the clicker for me as a click and a reward happens. The shush is this is your warning and a punishment happens. They have a habit of not showing that as much in the show, but it's the same kind of correlation. So, and also another issue with the shush method, he just does the shush and makes it look like it's a magic word. And then if you use it too much, it's just like no, stop. If you say no a million times and nothing's happening, it just becomes background noise. So it means nothing. Even more so because all they hear is shush, nothing is happening. So therefore it's just background noise. So you need to create some type of situation with it. That is how those kind of work. The shush is not a magic word that just poof, all animals translate to. It is the shush has to be associated with a stimulus of some sort, either a good stimulus or a bad stimulus. I mean, if I could train a dog with shush, but give them a treat every time afterwards, and it would have the complete opposite effect of what Cesar Millan does. Cesar Millan is using choke chains, shock collars, things of that nature, so that the shush has weight. I am getting shocked. And while I do acknowledge that the old school methods still, they do learn. I just feel that it is a less effective, less efficient, and in all honesty, it ruins the relationship. I mean, think of anybody in your life who's been abusive to you or just attacked you, and that was your main learning method from them. You don't have a positive relationship with that person. I guarantee it. You might go, oh, I did learn a lesson or two, but you're still not going to think of them fondly like, hey, maybe I want to go hang out with that person later on. And that's not the relationship people want with their dogs. That's not the relationship we want with anybody in our lives, in all honesty. So that's why I like this positive reinforcement methodology. With my science base, I acknowledge that there's 4 ways to learn: positive reinforcement, positive punishment. Positive doesn't mean good; it just means you're adding punishment. And positive reinforcement means you're adding something reinforcing. And then negative reinforcement means you're taking something away. And negative punishment means you're taking something punishing away. So I acknowledge that there's those 4 ways to learn. I focus on positive reinforcement, and I might dip into the negative punishment every once in a while, but I avoid the positive punishment and the negative reinforcement because those two have effects. And positive punishment is easy. You're adding stimulus. Usually it's pain or fear. So like making loud noises, smacking the dog, shock collars. That would be positive punishment. Negative reinforcement's a little trickier because usually you add something to take away. So that's like bits on a horse. You actually cause pain to the horse. And then when they go the direction you want, you take the pain away. And then they learn, okay, we got to go this way. Okay, I'm going to go that way. But it's because of a pain, still on a what we call an aversive, something they don't want in the first place to have happen. But that's why I stick with that scenario, because it makes my soul feel better. It makes my relationship with my animals feel better. And I've also seen like so much vast improvement in relationships with my clients, especially I've had a number that did start with the Cesar Millan methods. And I cannot tell you how many I have to fix after that, because they're like, well, I was using the Cesar Millan method and I've rolled them. I alpha rolled them. Nothing likes being alpha rolled. I used to use the alpha roll methodology, and I honestly can say that I never had a successful situation come out of that. Every time the dog ended up more neurotic, or more paranoid, or more aggressive, 100% of the time. But I slashed onto it for a number of years just because that's how I was told by people that knew better than me. Well, now I know better than them. And I've learned a different methodology. So, yeah, I do not agree with Cesar Millan in any way, shape, or form. And I have no qualms putting that on record. I will say that day in and day out. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? We're actually pretty close to the end of the time. Actually, it's funny. The trainer I'm training under, the Glasgow dog trainer, obviously in Scotland, which makes it interesting to listen to when I'm trying to learn. But he has a hashtag that he's been trying to push because in the positive reinforcement community, there's actually not as many male figures. Most of the big ones are female. There's Ken Ramirez and a few others, but or Steve White, and a couple others, but the rest are, most of them, Hannah Brannigan and who started it all? Oh, trying to remember her name now. Just having a brain fart. But anyway, he started a movement actually called hashtag Real Men Train Without Pain. And I've been I keep forgetting to put that out there, but I need to spread it some more, just because that's kind of goes in with the philosophy of how I think teaching and learning should be for all entities, big and small, furry, not furry. All right. Does anybody have any other questions to shove in there? That was a good topic to go on. I tend to get very uh, passion talking. That's an Animal Training Academy term. I'm also a member of passion talking. That's definitely one that I get into. All right. If anybody has any last minute questions, we have a few more minutes. Go ahead and put them in there. As I said before, more worried about people coming up in the next few months as they go back to work having dogs that have separation anxiety that did not have them before, simply because of they're just they got used to us being around more. And although I think there's going to be a little bit of separation anxiety on both ends of the leash, if you will, the human and the animal are going to be very distraught being separated when they got to hang out all day with their animals. I will say that when I switched into this career, that made me happier that my office was literally in my house, so I could at least do office time with, even if she's just there snoring away with me. So when I have to do the bookkeeping, still have to leave for for clients and such, but less so with the pandemonium coming on that's happening right now. But we are definitely keeping strong, and we will be opening up phase 3 is when we do plan on doing regular house to house stuff. Until then, you can just book one session at a time with the online, and I'd be happy to help with anything you have. The until then, right now I do have a couple clients that I'm experimenting with, and basically I'm just taking a couple here and there until I figure out how I want to do things to keep everybody safe, as and get it as efficient as possible, because this is new for me. It's new for everybody on the planet. So just trying to get that. And the main thing is obviously for me is going from home to home. That is the issue, because yes, I'm only seeing like a few clients here and there, but I could see 3 or 4 people in a day. and being exposed in people's homes is actually different than uh, uh, just being out and about, where we could uh, social distance and things of that nature. So uh, that is why I'm doing this slow introduction back and just not jumping on the bandwagon of opening up, no matter how hard it does hurt our pocketbooks as well as everybody else's. But luckily, we are prepped and ready for online learning for as many people out there. So, and thanks to a few of the entities here in town that have helped process grants and loans and things so that we can keep the lights on till this all blows over. And then we'll all be thinking back in 2030, oh, remember that day? That was a weird time. All right. Looks like we don't have any other questions. So I'm going to wrap it up. If any come in between now and then, because there's a slight delay in the video, I'll answer those. But I hope everybody stays safe. Stay. Oh, oh, Julie, hi. Haven't seen Julie since Georgia. I worked over at with the Kangaroos with her. Oh gosh, that was a long time ago. That was over a decade ago. But yeah, excellent. Well, I do this every fourth Wednesday, 8 o'clock. So if you ever want to try to catch it, feel right on in. Um, but I will catch everybody later. You all have good times and stay safe. And I will catch you next time. If you have any questions or would like to book with me, feel free to get in touch with me. Y'all have a good one. Now, if I can figure out where the button is.